What's up guys, today I'm back with another video comparing the iPad Air 2 with the original iPad Air. The 5th generation iPad was a major update to the iPad line. Its redesign slimmed down the side bezels while still maintaining the same screen. It was both incredibly thin and incredibly light, as thin as a pencil and weighing just a single pound. It even got the new name, the iPad Air. This year's model, though, broke further grounds in size and weight. With the iPad Air on the left and the iPad Air 2 on the right, the 2nd Gen Air is a whole 1.4 millimeters thinner. The iPhone 6 released earlier was already thinner than the original Air by 0.6 millimeters at just 6.9 millimeters thick, but the Air 2 was yet thinner than that. At 6.1 millimeters, it was thinner than both the original Air and even the iPhone 6 by almost a whole millimeter. Stacking them together, you can see just how thin the 2nd Gen Air really is. But other than size and weight, there were also significant changes to the design. On the right side, the mute rotation lock switch was removed and the volume rocker pushed upwards. Now this was a reasonable change because you can mute and lock orientation from the control center. A microphone hole has also been placed above the volume rocker. On the top, we still have the lock button and a 3.5mm headphone port, but the top edge microphone has been relocated. The right edge remains the same with nothing on it, and on the bottom, the dual speaker grills are now a single row of holes, and the openings are larger. And on the back, the two center microphone holes on the top edge and back are now next to the camera, on the right edge and on the back side. The lens has also lost that ring around it. The front remains largely the same, except now it includes Touch ID instead of the regular home button. But of course, there were also changes to the internal components, enhancing the performance of the iPad. Now I'm running the Benchmarks 3D Mark and GFX bench, but they both take a while, so I'll fast forward that and talk about the changes. The original iPad Air is running a 1.4 GHz dual-core A7 CPU with an M7 Motion coprocessor using a 64-bit variant of the ARMv8 ISA. It has a PowerVR Series 6 GPU, 1GB of LPDDR3 RAM, and a screen resolution of 2048 by 1536. The iPad Air 2 is running a 1.5 GHz triple-core A8X CPU with an M8 Motion coprocessor using the same 64-bit variant of the ARMv8 ISA. It has a PowerVR Series 6 XT GPU, 2GB of LPDDR3 RAM, and the same screen res as the iPad Air. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention is that the iPad Air used basically the same A7 CPU as did the iPhone 5S, but the iPad Air 2 is using an X variant of the A8, much like the iPads before the original Air. Looking at the results for the 3D Mark tests, the iPad Air had an overall score of 15,581 with a graphics score of 19,884 and a physics score of 8866, with these given frame rates for the graphics and physics tests. The iPad Air 2 had an overall score of 21,914 with a graphics score of 31,889 and a physics score of 10,461, with these given frame rates for the graphics and physics tests. The respective performance ratios are given on the right, and the overall average performance increase was 1.42 times. In the GFX bench tests, the iPad Air 2 was significantly better in terms of graphics performance with an average ratio of 2.32. The only place it seemed to lack in was driver overhead, so it seems like there were a lot of extra tasks the drivers were doing to make the GPU work, but overall, graphics are much better on the 2nd generation Air. As I mentioned earlier, the original Air used basically the same A7 as the iPhone 5S, while the Air 2 is using an X variant of the A8, and this may be part of the reason why the Air 2 is vastly better. If you check out GFX Bench's website and look at the frame rates for a few of the high-level tests, such as the Manhattan and T-Rex for the iPad Air and iPhone 5S, the 5S gets much higher results despite the fact that they are both using the same CPU and GPU. Of course, the iPad Air has many more pixels the GPU must push out, which is why Apple usually has higher graphics performing A7X variants of their CPUs, but for some reason an A7X wasn't introduced for the original Air. That sums up the comparison of the iPad Air and iPad Air 2, and as you can see, the second iPad Air had many changes in both design and performance, which overall seems for the better. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see me unbox and set up the iPad Air 2, you can click on this video or the link in the description.